I have been very outspoken about the rampant crime which is transforming Detroit from a world-class city into an increasingly wretched place to live, truly an embarrassing shell of its former self. For the past 5 years, the D has been judged the most dangerous big city in America. That's based on FBI violent crime data. What was once acclaimed as the Motor City has become the Murder City, with a homicide rate more than 10 times the national average. On my Facebook page a few weeks back, I only half-kiddingly suggested that what Detroit needs is someone like the character Paul Kersey, played by the late actor Charles Bronson in that series of 5 Death Wish movies from 1974 to 94. A person fed up with being a crime victim, who embarks on a vigilante crusade, giving thugs a taste of their own medicine.
Oh my Lord, it's the creep that stole my pocketbook a few weeks ago.
All right.
As it turns out, an increasing number of folks in Detroit and across America are standing up and sticking it to would-be assailants. In particular, going after home invaders with deadly or near-deadly force. Like the young mother in Oklahoma who shot and killed a thug who broke into her home on New Year's Eve 2012.
Yes, I've got 2 guns in my hand. Is it okay to shoot him if he comes in the store?
Well, you have to do whatever you can do to protect yourself. I can't tell you that you can do that, but you do what you have to do to protect your baby.
I was going to have to choose him or my son, and it wasn't going to be my son, so I did what I had to do.
Or the 72-year-old grandma in Southern California who shot at and barely missed a man trying to break in on she and her disabled husband.
Whatever's necessary to literally stop them. He was not going to come into my home.
He's standing at my door, at my back door. He's in my yard. Back up, you son of a don't back up!
Or the personal trainer and former kickboxer who, as we used to say on the block, tried to beat the brakes off this 19-year-old punk he caught breaking into his garage.
Just had to defend myself and, drag him out into the front.
Then there's the woman in Georgia who shot up a man who was in the process of robbing her home. The crook croaked a few days later, the shooter's husband calling his wife a hero.
Her life is saved and our kids' lives are saved. And that's all I'd like to say.
And in Detroit, where a would-be robber wound up shot to death, getting smoked, breaking into the home of a retired city cop.
I know his family is going through a terrible thing, but it was either me or him. And my training as a police officer, I wouldn't have allowed that to be me.
Within the past few weeks, there have been a string of similar incidents in the D, with folks refusing to become crime victims without a gunfight. Like this one caught on surveillance tape of a woman firing an assault rifle recently given her by her husband at 3 armed teenagers who broke into their home.
I let them know I had a gun once they was in the house, and they challenged me and said I don't have a gun. So that's when I shot off the first round.
Within 2 hours of each other on Saturday morning, February 8th, a woman pulls a gun on 2 would-be carjackers on Detroit's west side, killing one. Then, a man in another part of the city shoots and kills one of 2 home invaders. Among those cheering on these citizen avengers is Detroit's top cop, Police Chief James Craig.
When we look at our good community members that have concealed weapons, there's a greater likelihood in the city of Detroit that they shoot.
It seems that along with being the murder capital of America, Detroit may also be the justified homicide capital of the nation, with an average of more than 12 a year over the past decade. In 2011, the last year for which I could find complete figures, there were 30 justified uses of deadly force in Detroit, 6 times as many as 5 years earlier in 2006. And over that 5-year period, the number of deadly force incidents rose nearly every year.
It's not surprising that Detroit, America's most violent city, would have the country's most violent neighborhood. But Detroit is also home to America's second, third, and seventh most violent neighborhoods as well. According to a new study by NeighborhoodScout.com, a person living in these neighborhoods has worse than a 1 in 10 chance of being robbed at gunpoint, beaten senseless, raped, or murdered. This shocked even us.
It was the great Chinese philosopher Confucius who once said, "The strength of a nation derives from the integrity of the home." And so, in that vein, it's a long-held set of principles known collectively as the castle doctrine, from the old saying, "A man's home is his castle," which frames the legal justification for folks using deadly force to defend the place where they're living. In more precise legal terms, the castle doctrine is mostly interpreted as no duty to retreat. And so the legal burden of proof is much less challenging than that for actual justifiable homicide. In some states, the castle doctrine extends to a car or any place where you're lawfully at, even visiting a business. In late summer of 2012, at a Dollar General store in Jacksonville, Florida, a customer was declared justified in killing 19-year-old Rakeem Odoms, who, along with a friend, was trying to rob the place, using what turned out to be air pistols.
The customer drew his gun and ordered them to put theirs down. Detectives say Odoms did not, and the customer shot him 3 times, killing him.
In Colorado, back in the 1980s, a law was enacted nicknamed the Make My Day Law, which laid out the legal justification for someone in that state defending their home with deadly force. That nickname coming from a line in the 1983 Clint Eastwood movie, Sudden Impact.
Go ahead. Make my day.
It is only a small leap from the concept of defense of home or self to defense of community, which is what vigilantism is all about. In the Old West, it was called frontier justice, where concerned citizens would take on the role of cop, judge, and often executioner.
I'll say this for you, Suggs. You're the kind of man that's a pleasure to hang. If all you can talk is guff, go talk it to the devil.
Boys, understand what's going on here? Harden your heart.
In a confrontation, the saying used to be, "He who fights then runs away lives to fight another day." But increasingly now that saying is being replaced by a new one. With laws on the book like Stand Your Ground, no more need to run, just whip it out and fire your gun. According to a recent study, the justifiable homicide rate has jumped significantly in states with so-called Stand Your Ground laws, which allow folks out in public who claim to be in fear for their lives to use lethal force rather than back away. Stand Your Ground was the law which last summer enabled George Zimmerman to get away with killing unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin. And it was also the likely basis for a Florida jury just weeks ago to not convict Michael Dunn of murder in the killing of another unarmed kid, 17-year-old Jordan Davis.
We will continue to stand, and we will continue to wait for justice for Jordan.
Personally, I'm very uncomfortable with the whole concept of Stand Your Ground and think the laws ought to be scrapped, or at the very least significantly changed to make it tougher for folks like Dunn and Zimmerman to get away with murder. Back in Detroit, more bad guys getting blown away by homeowners. This is a dramatic recreation of an incident on the east side of town during the early morning hours of February 22nd of this year. A man was awakened from his sleep and caught 2 thieves in his house.
The homeowner tried to have a little chat with the 2 fellows, but when one of the bad guys raised a tire iron, the homeowner taught him a lesson that he will not ever be able to remember.
Police Chief Craig has said repeatedly that armed, law-abiding citizens could help deter crime in Detroit. To quote the ancient Greek playwright Aeschylus, "Justice turns the scale, bringing to some learning through suffering." And most certainly, more and more criminals are suffering death or serious injury from folks sick of being crime victims. The mom of that would-be thief killed trying to rob a Jacksonville, Florida Dollar General store realizes her son learned a lesson the very hardest way possible, by dying for his mistake.
I just don't believe, can't believe it took place, and it happened, but things happen and we make bad choices. And sometimes we have to deal with bad consequences.
Now understand, I'm not advocating or even suggesting that folks should go around gunning for lawbreakers. But as one who's basically anti-gun, I am going to do something which for me is counterintuitive. I'm urging folks, particularly in high crime places like Detroit, to take all necessary precautions to protect yourself, your family, and your property, including keeping a gun of some sort locked, loaded, and handy at all times, making sure, of course, that kids can't accidentally get a hold of it. Crime is having an especially devastating impact on the D, a city very near and dear to my heart. If it is ever to have a shot at making a comeback, these lawless, godless thugs have got to be stopped. The cops, with the help of all citizens of goodwill, just have to take out the trash, if need be, a la the Paul Kersey character in the Death Wish movies. Let me repeat, I'm not calling for folks to do anything that would clearly be illegal. But good, decent folks in Detroit and elsewhere deserve to live their lives free of the fear of being crime victims. So let me say again, it's high time to get the trash off our streets. And that is my 2 cents for this week.